Welcome to another episode of Post in Black, where we celebrate Black excellence behind the lens. We have a very, very special episode because we got family in the building, not just any family. We got Calvin O'Neill Jr., animation editor on The Proud Family, Prouder and Louder. Calvin, my guy.
David.
Thank you for joining.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
So happy to be here.
It's awesome, man. And
Yeah.
we are filming this in Black History Month, even though this is airing after. So happy Black History Month to you,
Happy
my
Black
brother.
History Month to you too, my
You know
brother.
what I mean?
Yeah.
You know how Black people do. We trying to, and especially brothers, we always up each other and be like, I'm trying to get like you.
Especially.
No, I'm trying to get like you.
Man, I'm just trying to get like you. Man, you doing that.
Yeah.
Man, hey, man.
Nah, man.
Yeah.
On your worst day, that's my
That's
best
my
day.
best day. I hope you do really well, brother.
You feel me? Yeah. What's that? Sorry to bother
Sorry
you.
about you. Yeah, I'm feeling really good, man. That's really good, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, it's an awesome feat to have you here. And as a tribute to Post in Black, we always start with an icebreaker. Is that okay? Is that okay with you?
Always. Yeah.
All right. You are working on an animated show, very popular show. What was one of your favorite animation shows growing up when you were growing up? What did you watch? What caught your eye?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, I gotta say off the back, the first thing I can remember, the earliest thing I remember watching was Robin Williams as a genie
Oh man.
in Aladdin.
Yeah.
You know, that was like the thing that kicked it off for me. But then my dad was always big into like Bugs Bunny
Yeah.
and the Looney Tunes. Like growing up, he would always say, "What's up, Doc?" You know, like that's how he would like greet me, like say good morning, all that stuff. And so like definitely Bugs Bunny, you know, Aladdin, some of those early Disney movies. But, you know, I gotta say Looney Tunes, man.
Looney Tunes.
Like when I go back to everything, Looney Tunes is like the bedrock of any animation I've ever watched, you know, from the story structure, from like the simple tropes of like rabbit season, duck season, you know, all that stuff. You know, it's kind of the fundamentals
Yeah.
as far as animation is concerned.
And you took me back because
Yeah.
just you saying that, I started smiling thinking about some of the quotes, you know, like we're hunting rabbit. You know, all-
Yeah. Man, even like Tom and Jerry.
Yeah,
That
man.
Tom and Jerry, it's one thing to see a trope done literally hundreds of times and to see a story reinvent itself
Right.
100 plus times. You know, it's like, oh, you're watching Tom and Jerry. What's gonna happen this one this time, you know? And that lended into like, you know, Coyote and Roadrunner. And the animation to me was like, you know, in a certain way, a familiar story that everyone knows,
Right.
but we have like this area and convention where we're gonna like turn it on its head each time. So as a kid, it's like I think I know what's gonna happen, but you always know you're gonna be surprised, and that's what keeps you coming back. you
Right,
know?
right.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely fire. Even jumping in there, like one of my favorite cartoons. You talk about Tom and Jerry. It was the Pink Panther.
Oh, yeah.
the jazz and the music, and they just play, and I was hypnotized.
Yeah.
I couldn't turn it off. Like all the cartoons that had words, I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But this guy, ding 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 ding. I'm like, what is happening next? I just couldn't turn it off.
The Pink Panther is so interesting because the animation was tied with the music, and like the cleverness of the music tied into the Pink Panther and how he was gonna like, you know, deceive Detective Clouseau,
Yeah.
or you know how he was gonna do that, get away with even like the opening credits in some of those movies.
Yeah.
Before the cartoon came
Right.
out, was like, hey, you know,
It's classic.
It's a classic.
Yeah. And I remember looking up something like years ago, and it like started in 1969.
Yep.
Cartoon, and it didn't go off until like to the 2000, like 2010, 2011,
Yep.
and that is incredible. That's an incredible run.
Oh, I mean, yeah, because they did that. They had that reboot like in 2006 with Steve Martin and Beyonce,
right.
and it was like a resurgence of a bit. But you know, that just led to like the credence of the IP and you know the cartoon coming out back in the 70s or whatnot. You know,
It's
and,
crazy.
and just the title itself carrying to the aesthetic of what people want to see. It's a
Yeah.
familiar thing, you know.
Right.
Like even when Space Jam came out,
Right.
people might have been like, "What's Space Jam?" But you still knew who Bugs Bunny was.
Exactly.
You know,
It's a
Looney
new
Tunes
take.
back in action. You
New
know, it's
spin.
like
Yeah.
like you kind of know what to expect a little bit. So, I mean, that's the safe bet of animation. Sometimes, like you know what you're gonna get, but the beauty is being able to subvert the story in a different way each and every time.
Right. Even jumping into that, we're talking about you now. You're working on, the Proud Family, Prouder and Louder, and this is a reboot.
Yeah.
And we're gonna
Yeah.
get into like where you're from and all of that. But just jumping into right in this situation, this particular story, I'm intrigued because as an editor, I want to know like what's it like animated, being an animation editor, and then what's it like being an animation editor on a show that's already been done, and then having that pressure to come back and like keep the same vibe and keep that same energy, and then be intriguing enough to the audience where they say, oh no, there's a connection, but it's different, it's new. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's a great question.
A lot of questions.
That's a lot of questions. I'll see if I can remember everything. If I miss something, let me know. But
Yeah.
I see where you're coming from because, the beauty of, working as an animation editor, like on a, legacy IP like that is, the executive producers, the producers on the show, they brought in like an ace writing team,
Yeah.
like ace,
Okay.
and, before I even see anything, the script is already making me feel a certain kind of way. I'm reading the script, coming in as an editor, I'm about to get the storyboards and reading just the script. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I already feel this.
Right.
I know what you're trying to say. If I'm not sure, I'll ask, like, is this what we're trying to do? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Go back into, the edit suite and just be like, all right, I want to make sure as an editor, as like a storyteller, I'm making sure what was written on the page
Okay.
comes across
Okay.
the way it feels like on the page in animation.
I
And
got you.
one of the biggest roles of an animation editor is not just to dictate, how the story flows, but our role is to make sure, the shots are concise, playing the right way, because in the early stages, we're giving a blueprint to the animators. It's not just, creating the story, it's creating the timing. So when we hand it off to animation, they have a pretty good idea of how long these shots are going to last. So everything flows cohesively
Got you.
down to the very frame. So a lot of it starts off with, let's find the story. Are all the jokes hitting? Are all the timings right? Great. Jokes are hitting, timing's right, story's playing the way it needs to. Now we need to break up these 300, 400 plus shots,
Yeah.
Down to the frame. This is shot 100, this is shot 102, this is shot 103, all the way to the end. This shot's 47 frames, this shot's 57, this shot's 172 frames. Every single shot needs to be exported the right way, so when it goes to the animation, it's about that length. Some things always change a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's really to give the idea and blueprint and the skeleton before it comes back into animation.
Yeah.
Well, it comes back from animation, and then we literally cobble it back together again.
Now jumping in, I know he asked you a bunch of questions, but I'm gonna stick with that.
Yeah.
How long is that process, and what's the difference in that process versus live action?
So that's a
Yeah.
great question. Live action, you're on set, you got your shot list,
Mm-hmm.
you might have some pickups later on, but you get everything you want in the can that day.
Okay.
Animation is 100% different because even though you start drawing to the script, start boarding out the script, storyboard artists, they can change things like in the actual frame
Right.
in real time.
Right.
So even when we have something like we have a first iteration of something, if the director or storyboard artist, or the producer is not feeling it, it's like, hey, let's go back. Let's redraw it because we can just redraw it. It's not
Yeah.
like live action, just going down and reshooting it the same
Right.
day. You can redraw it like the next few days to a week, and then it's right in the cut, like, the next day or the next week, just like that.
Wow.
So there's so much more opportunity to iterate. It can be like a blessing and a curse, but it creates a lot of flexibility to you flesh out things the way, the story producers and the directors want to.
Yeah.
honestly.
I see. Is that like a typical work day for you? What is a typical work day for you in animation, or does it vary based on those type of situations that you have to do something different like that, like redraw or anything?
It really varies. One day, like, it does vary. One day you could just be assembling the
Yeah.
entire story. You get 4 different, acts from each storyboard artist. They, board maybe 5 to 7 minutes of an episode, and you bring it all together. So that could be anywhere between like a few days to a week.
Yeah.
And then after that, once you have something solidified,
Yeah.
the director watches it, the producers watch it, based on their feedback. Is it feeling well? Is it playing well? That's when we start talking about changes. So
Okay, I got you.
one day it's building, next day it could just be reviews,
Yeah.
like watching everything to make sure everyone's feeling the same way about the piece.
I got you.
And then, after that, you kind of start leaning to, all right, this is working, this isn't. Let's reboard everything that isn't working. And that could be a whole week in itself where you're just rebuilding revisions based on, what everyone's talking about and feeling, essentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now that strikes is like excuse me, that strikes me as like you have to know or have to have a love for what you're knowing, what you're doing. And was this something you always wanted to do? Like, jumping backwards, like where are you from? Did where you grew up influence like you wanting to get into it? Were your parents, family member, or was it just something that you just picked up and you're like, you know what? I want to get into, I love cartoons. I want to make them. I want to be behind the scenes with that.
I mean, I always loved cartoons.
Yeah.
Always loved cartoons. I just love the expressiveness, the suspension of disbelief, the otherworldliness of it. When you're a kid and you're going through the motions, school, this, that, going to church.
Yeah.
I'm from Detroit originally.
Yes, sir.
So, that's a very Midwestern upbringing. So it was, go to school, go to church, shovel the driveway if it's snowing. Really regimented. So cartoons were the biggest escape. Biggest escape. So when I'm seeing, Robin Williams do Aladdin, or I'm seeing Bugs Bunny, change into like a second character, or I'm seeing Tom and Jerry going through it again. That was the escape for me.
Okay.
Even outside of animation, from a live action standpoint, Jim Carrey, in The Mask, Ace Ventura, Will Smith in Fresh Prince, or Men in Black, Independence Day, they were pretty animated in their own right. So movies in that sense was an escape for me.
I see.
Beautiful escape for me. So that love was always there, and I knew I wanted to cultivate that somehow. So when high school came along, I needed to get serious. I kind of was always playing sports.
Yeah.
Kind of had to put sports aside for a year, and I had to ask myself, how am I going to take this next step?
Yeah.
And that's a pretty intense story because, I went to film school.
Yeah.
In Chicago. Went from Detroit to Chicago at a college called Columbia College. They had a film school there. But that was around 2008 when the last recession really hit. So, I had my loan set up to go to school there, but really bad timing. A lot of my loans defaulted, so I only had one semester.
Wow.
At the end of it, so you're 19 years old, you're just out of high school, you want to get into film, like this has been your passion, and then film school is put on the back burner because of the situations that you're in. And this is an extension to tell anyone who's trying to get into this, just because one avenue of your plan doesn't work out doesn't mean things are, all for naught.
Right.
It could feel that way.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it does and it will. And if it doesn't feel that way, that means you don't care as much. But it's right? But it's normal to feel that way. So I ended up, literally sleeping on my uncle's couch in Evanston, Illinois for about 6 months, 6 months working, trying to do independent film projects and stuff like that. But nothing really came to fruition. And my parents, they had moved from Detroit, Michigan in 2008 to Shreveport, Louisiana.
My goodness.
Yeah.
That's a shift.
That's a big shift. It was a culture shock to say anything.
For sure.
Someone who grew up literally like from birth to 18, like in Detroit, like suburbs of Detroit, going to the South. It was a big culture shock.
Yeah. I can imagine.
There was Confederate statues in front of the courthouse. There was just a different way of living. I definitely understood what Southern hospitality was, but that was a shift. And going from Chicago to Shreveport was a big, shift. But luckily, the tax incentives were going on around this time. And this is about 2009, so Louisiana's getting a lot of tax incentives.
Yeah.
You know, Georgia was too at the time, but Louisiana was a part of that pie. So I was fortunate enough, you know, some of my family members saw this news broadcast about some film training going on.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to train local talent to keep productions in Louisiana.
Okay.
So there was a grip class, there was, you know, a PA class.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you know, when I got there was an assistant editing training class. I had been one of those film school students who was like, I'm going to be a writer director and nothing else.
Yeah.
But this was an opportunity, and I told myself, I don't really know that much about editing. I've edited a few like student projects, but this is as long as I told myself, as long as I can get an IMDb credit, my first one, maybe I can start, you know, building from there. Let me just get my first one.
Yeah.
If I can prove myself enough, I can do that. Everything else can most likely come to fruition. And that's kind of how things went, man. That class, it was an assistant editing training class, like I said. And this might be a deep cut, but there was this stuntman named Randall Reeder, this big guy. He had a small role in Harold and Kumar Go to Guantanamo Bay.
Okay.
And he's like he was one of the big guys in Deadpool.
Yeah.
When they're actually making like the Deadpool list in the movie, he's the big guy.
Yeah.
He was doing his first directorial feature, and he used this class to help organize the footage, all this other stuff.
Man.
And so that's where I really cut my teeth as an editor for the first time. We were in a class, but we were organizing footage, logging it, learning how to be an assistant editor. And after that class, Eva Contes, she was the editor on
Starship Troopers 3.
She was going to be the editor on this new animated short film that they were doing in town. And the class went really well. You know, I put my best foot forward, and she was like, hey, you know, we're working on this small animated short film,
Right.
you know, in town. You know, I can't really guarantee, you know, you getting paid consistently, but you can get a credit if you want to, you know, volunteer to work for it. And I was like, yeah, of course.
That's in line with what I'm trying to go for.
100%.
Right.
You're 19, right out of high school a year
sure.
before. It's like, that's exactly what you're looking for. It turned out way better than I could ever imagine, man. Than I could ever imagine.
Wow.
It was just such a blessing because I went on to work on that short film. It was called The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore.
Yeah.
We finished it at about 2011, submitted it to, you know, a bunch of festivals, made a bunch of Academy Award qualifying festivals, and in 2012, it won for Best Animated Short.
Come on, wait, you gotta repeat that again. Best animated short. What award show was this?
The Oscars.
Come on, sir.
Yeah.
And that was 2012?
That was 2012.
So I was at the Oscars when that won.
You were at the Oscars?
Yeah, man.
You were there?
I was the voice of God for the Oscars.
Really?
I was a tour guide for the Dolby Theater, Kodak Theater for 10 years. So I used to call the show for
So
the
you were
theater.
calling the show that year?
Yes, sir.
Bro, that's
crazy.
crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people, I keep it on the hush, but I went to the Oscars every year for
I'm
like
glad
10
you
years.
didn't keep on the hush with me, man. That's
That's why I was like, what year?
that was crazy. That's crazy.
That's wild.
Because
But it's not about me. It's
no,
about you.
no. But it was funny because the Bridesmaids that year they announced they announced the best animated short.
Yeah, Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, they were there. They announced us.
Right.
So we're, you know, the producers and the directors, they were in LA. We were in Shreveport. The entire cast and crew at Moonbot. We were just crossing our fingers, you know, like what's gonna happen. So, long story short, that was just such a blessing.
Yeah.
Not
Not sitting
just
with an Oscar winner, y'all. Oscar winner in the building.
man, when you moments when you say God is good,
Yeah.
and you know, even if you haven't talked to him in a long time, it's just like
Kind of puts it back on track.
There's those moments where he reminds you, he's like, hey man, you know, I'm here.
Right.
You know, I didn't forget about you because come on, when you're 19, you leave film school.
Yeah.
You think that's the end of it, and you see all your other friends, you know, still going to college, figuring stuff out, and you have to make your own path. That's why I need to reiterate, everyone's path is different.
Come on.
Everyone's path is different.
Come on. Talk about it.
You can't really be holding yourself to one path. I encourage you to learn about as many paths as you possibly can, only so it can help the non-convenient path that you might end up taking down the line. Because it might not be the way you see it. You know, it's the age-old saying, you make a plan, God laughs.
Yeah.
Things worked out better than I could have ever imagined. If I had planned it the way I thought, I would never be where I am right now.
We're going to take a break to take an offering right now for Calvin O'Neill Jr. Baptist Ministries. Now I'm playing.
It feels that way. I haven't been to a Baptist church in a long time, but it's still, some things stick with you, man.
You're spitting so much truth, and I think it really resonates with me and even my brother just about the journey. And I think that's why we're doing this, because a lot of times we're seeing, especially nowadays, social media, you see the end.
Yeah.
You see the good. You see all the stuff that people are doing, all the wins, and you could really I think everybody has gone through a state of depression for a day in some way. Just looking your timeline.
Yes,
you just see nothing but wins, and that's not reality.
Nope.
And so you're like, man, everybody's doing this. I'm not winning. No, you woke up today. That's a win.
That's a win.
You got your lights on in your house. That's
a
win.
win.
You feel me? And so
you have the passion to still want to
do
this.
something. Yeah.
That's a win.
That's
and
a
so
win.
many people feel like that's a loss.
Yeah.
Because just they're not where they want to be, but so many people can't even feel that way when they wake up in the morning.
Right. Right.
So if you wake up in the morning, you're not where you want to be, and you still have that passion to do what you want to do, bro, you're already winning. You don't even realize it. You don't.
And we're going to jump into a little bit more with the Proud family, because you talk about that story with the Oscar win, Academy Award win. And then, again, coming back to the Proud family, like, how was it with your experience working on this show? And what is something that you've taken away from working on a project like this that you would want to share with other people? Obviously, you talked about the day-to-day and just your experience, but was there ever like someone that was a mentor to you on the show? Because I know they relaunched it. So was there somebody that kind of came in and gave you the ropes, and you were able to take your experience to like, okay, I have all this experience. I have this, God's with me. All right, let's dive in. I don't feel pressure to work on something so big. Was there somebody say, hey, I like you, young brother. Like, come on. Or, is there somebody that you're taking underneath your wing?
I mean, there's a little bit of that, but at the same time, I gotta really tip my hat off just to the people who were at Moonbot Studios when that Oscar win happened, because I was an assistant editor and an assistant director on. I was really just coming into. I mean, I was 19. I was very young, and some of the people that came in, they were about 5 years older than me, coming out of art school. Making the film as beautiful as it was.
Yeah,
and just. From my perspective, not going to film school and seeing these, literally at the time, students fresh out of college make this piece of content that really just set the bar high for what we wanted to do. I was sitting on the shoulder of giants and just watching some amazing stuff happen. So even though I didn't get a chance to finish film school, that was my film school.
Exactly.
Seeing, people, my peers figure out, problem solve, talk to people, at that echelon of, story creation, that really, seeing them operate the way they did really garnered a lot of confidence in myself. And to answer your question, so, Moonbot, a lot of the people who were, the higher ups there, they wanted to cultivate experienced and seasoned artists to come through to the studio to, enrich us.
Yeah.
So we would have people like, Ralph Eggleston, he did the animated Pixar short for the Birds. He came in to talk to us one time, rest in peace. And Tonko House, the people that have, they've been nominated for Academy Awards and they have a Netflix show out. They came and talked to us. And I was really pleasantly surprised that once these people were coming in, I noticed that Bruce Smith was on the list of next people that were going to come in and talk to us at Moonbot. The higher ups got him to come and talk to us.
Yeah. A legend.
Legend.
Yeah.
And I did a double take because when I first started at Moonbot, I was the only black person working at the studio. So you got a studio of 50 people, in Louisiana, and I'm 19 years old, and I'm the only black person, working there at the time. That changed a little bit, but so Bruce came in when I was maybe about 25, and I was there about maybe 6 years or so. So he comes in. He comes in a little bit early the day he's supposed to arrive, and I get to work early, and I'm trying to clean up my edit suite, make everything, dope as hell, because baby as kids do is coming in to talk to us, So I get in early, and I don't realize my boss also brings him in early to show him the studio before his talk. So I'm in my office, and I'm getting everything prepared for the day, and he starts walking by with my boss, and he walks by, and I notice him for a split second, and I say, "What are you doing here?" Because he was a little early.
Yeah.
And then he looks at me like this. He's like, "What are you doing here? And who are you?" And I'm stammering. I'm trying to get my words together because I was like, "Man, I'm preparing. I'm trying to figure out what to say to this guy." And he catches me off guard. I'm like, "I'm Calvin. I'm the editor here, and I've been here for this long, and it's nice to meet you." And he's like, "Okay, cool. Cool, really cool dude. Came in and talked to us that day. Gave a really great speech on just how he broke into the industry, what we were doing, how it was special. And, long story short, this is 2016. After, he talks to the studio, I pull him aside and I'm like, "Hey man, I really need some, guidance and mentorship right now. And I really respect what you do." And he's like, "Say no more. Here's my number. If you ever, come out to LA, just, let me know. So that's 2016. Fast forward to 2019, I go off and work for a tech company for a few years in Florida, and it's really not for me. It was a good opportunity, but it wasn't for me. I really wanted to get back into animation and storytelling, and I'm about to quit my job, and I text Bruce, and I'm like, "Bruce, thinking about quitting my job. I'm reaching out to everyone I know out in California. Do you possibly have anything coming up anytime soon?" Wouldn't you believe it? He was like, "Yeah, man, I might have something coming up." 3 days after I started driving to Los Angeles, the reports come out, "Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, renewed," So I was like, what?
Yeah.
The timing was just crazy.
Yeah.
Because he was like, "Yeah, man, I might have something." I have no idea what
You
it
didn't
is.
even know.
I didn't even know. And I put two and two together 3 days later when the press release comes out. I'm like, whoa, wait a second, So I garnered that relationship, interviewed the following February, and then June of 2020 is when I started. Just like that, man.
The power of the follow-up.
The power
Of
of
reaching out.
follow-up.
And one thing I like too is that you were just, like he said, reach out. And you did.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, especially if we're not on a certain level, there's a little bit of fear attached to
100%.
us even, somebody said it, but I don't know. I don't look where you are.
Yeah.
Because you asked, you text, and I might have something. Just genuine.
Just genuine.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I was scared.
Oh, I believe it.
I was so nervous the entire time. Yeah. But that just speaks to, next time I ask for, an opportunity and I'm nervous, you go back to that same point.
Has something to draw from.
I was nervous before. This is going to happen to me again in my career. I'm going to be nervous again, but I have the experience of knowing, hey, what's the worst that could happen?
Right.
Ask.
Ask.
Just ask.
Ask.
Just ask. Be respectful. Appreciate people's time.
Yes, sir.
But ask.
But ask.
That's the worst thing they can do is say no.
Say no. And then it gets you, somebody told me years ago, I said every no gets you closer to your yes.
Exactly.
Because then you don't have to waste time.
And people know where you're coming from.
For sure.
People know what you're striving for. And if they know what you're striving for, they can find a lane for you.
Yeah.
If you don't speak up and say what lane you can actually go down, they're not going to know what to do for you, even if they can help.
We're not going to keep you all day, but one of the things I did want to ask you about is you talk about your experience in working at a place that you were one of the only Black people, and now you're on the Proud Family, Prouder and Louder. I would venture to say the experience is different.
Man, like, I would tell you, I didn't realize the experience could feel that way. You think about it, and this isn't a knock on any other projects I've worked on, because
Right.
I've been very lucky and I've had so much fun working on all the projects I did before Proud.
Yeah.
They're very life affirming, and I learned so much. If your producer is black, your director is black, your coordinator is black, your other executive producer is black, showrunner is black, you're gonna feel that much more comfortable in your role inherently without even thinking about it.
Yeah. It's like what a lot of, like, to be honest, it's a lot of what white people get to experience every day.
You could definitely
You know?
you could definitely phrase it that way, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. Like just on sets and everything. And that's why there's such a big push and a call for diversity.
Yes.
And if the reason why is because there is none, or there's a huge lack. I mean,
There's a
not,
huge
not to
lack.
jump in there just talking about the Oscars. I remember my coworkers. I was the only black tour guide there for 10 years,
100%.
until my friend she got hired. And one of the things that we talked about was, like, when I was calling the show, a lot of celebrities would come down there, and I'm in the orchestra right next to the stage,
Right.
and they're like, David, man, Samuel Jackson said hi to you. Or Janelle Monáe, like, you walked to the back with her. You like helped her. Like, do you know her? And I said, can y'all take a look at this theater? It's 3,400 seats. I'm a black man on the lower level in the orchestra. I got a headset and a notebook with all the commercial breaks. I'm not security. I'm not anything. They're like, what are you doing?
What are you doing here?
Like, you're not serving us. You're not this. Man, you're
Right.
you're like on our level. Like, who are you?
That's
They
why,
just didn't understand and compute how big it was.
and it was tongue in cheek, but that's why Bruce was like, "What are you doing here?
Yeah.
How did this,
They didn't let me know they had one.
bro? I'm telling you." And it's not, and like I said, it's not to knock any other productions,
For sure.
You know, because I felt I had a voice in all those productions, but this was a situation where I never even had to question if my voice would be heard in the way I inherently feel, speak, or want to be known as.
People don't realize how big that is.
Yep.
Like, in every space, how comforting, how like comfortable it is just to be like you get me.
You
You
get
know,
me?
like I see this stuff all the time, even with sports. You know, they had
Oh, yeah.
Stephen A. Smith and somebody arguing on
Tell
the
'em.
thing,
Yep.
and like other people, other races will like, oh my God, they're getting mad. I said, man, those were two people in the barbershop. That ain't nothing. That's the homies talking when we getting fired up about something, arguing about who's better, you know, Kobe or Jordan.
they feel safe to talk that way
Because
in
you know
that
somebody's not
space.
going to judge you. They're
And-
not going to think, oh, he got an attitude, or what's wrong with Calvin today.
100%. And you can filter yourself and talk to people in a certain way where they'll get you.
Yeah.
You know, you'll filter yourself a little bit, but you won't question if they'll get you, because they'll get you based on how you're filtering yourself. But to be unfiltered and to already be known, you can't describe it. You know,
Man.
and that just made working on the show that much more powerful and encouraging.
Yeah.
I'm just being myself, telling my truth.
Yeah.
I gotta shout out my director, Tara Nicole Whitaker.
Okay.
She just gave me so much license, and she had such a good creative eye to know where to, enhance the
Yeah.
episodes where they needed to be enhanced.
Yeah.
And Bruce Smith and like Ralph Farquhar and Calvin Brown Jr., the EPs on the show, they really, I think from their standpoint, they told themselves, finally, we got a collective of people who we know can think for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's not so much us making sure our ideas are put on, the wall.
Right.
We want to make sure we get the right people, because we know if we get the right people, what we were going to say, it's not only going to be, exemplified tenfold.
Yeah.
People are going to feel motivated and inspired to express it in their own way.
Yeah.
And I've never been a part of a crew that felt that welcoming before. It was amazing. It was unspoken. and we were in such a great place to do it. Now, mind you, I started, June 2020,
Yeah.
literally the week of Juneteenth. I can't tell you how much of an impact working on a show where people literally look like me mattered in a moment like that.
Yeah.
You're isolated, you're working in an apartment, your suite's in your second bedroom, and you see this egregious act that's taking place the month before. The entire country has seen it.
Yeah. Everyone's
feeling a type of way about it. And you start the week of Juneteenth on like the blackest show, blackest cartoon you could, and you move from a place called Plantation, Florida.
Couldn't get no more scripted.
Couldn't.
Right?
And none of that went to waste on the show.
Right.
So when you're in those moments where you have to put this scene together or you have to take this direction or you're trying to convey this sort of message, everything's there. And it's not just everything's there. The people who are trying to put you in a place to be the best storyteller you can, they know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Because hats off to Disney. That week, Juneteenth wasn't an official holiday yet.
Not yet. But they was like,
but Bruce and the crew, they said my first week, one of my first meetings was literally, hey y'all, we're taking Friday off because Friday is Juneteenth.
Ain't no
and
questions.
I don't know about the other productions, but Proud right now, we're not gonna be working on that. So my first week was like a 4-day week. That was kind of cool. But in the spirit of why we were taking that day off, though,
yeah. Yeah.
let's not forget what we're trying to do here, and that carried itself through the entire show, man. So it was, and will always be a blessing because of that.
No, that's absolutely amazing. And one of the last questions I just want to ask you too. You mentioned Juneteenth.
Mm-hmm.
This year, you're getting a little pushback from a couple of articles,
100%,
because of the Juneteenth episode that came out, and that clip is kind of going viral. I had some notes down here. It said New York Post reports that episode was toxic, divisive, destructive, and blatant anti-white propaganda. As an editor on the material like this that is so black and for us, like it's just us talking, it's just us telling the truth, but it's deemed, the opposite of what it's intended to be. How important is it for you to work on like a show like this? And what kind of wrap with that one?
That was that was and is the last episode I worked on Proud Family before I had to move on. And the importance of it meant everything to me. Mm-hmm. Not just because I came onto the show literally on the week of Juneteenth, but everything the show meant to me as a kid and how seen I felt. Not just how seen I felt, but after everything that happened with George Floyd in 2020, just I know there was a lot of chaos in terms of how people felt, but just the camaraderie through that chaos of we're gonna be okay, we're gonna be all right, and in order to be all right, in order to be okay, it's so important to tell a story of this magnitude, not just a story of this magnitude, but a situation so many people have been in that they couldn't really express, not just in real life, but especially through animation.
Yeah.
The ending of the episode that everyone's talking about has changed a lot. Even when we started it, even from writing it and boarding it and even into animation, it changed over and over again. And hats off to Bruce Smith and Disney for letting that kind of story play out, because he pushed it as far as he could in the most respectful way possible. Mm-hmm. Because for me, I watched Penny, La Cienega and Zoe and Dejanay when I was 11 years old. I watched these guys every Sunday. And to literally take his storyboards, with Tara's direction, and to see these characters I grew up with get arrested, get handcuffed, fight for an ideal that they knew they were most likely going to be punished for, and they still did it in spite of that. If it's not clear right now, I'm still having a tough time putting it into words.
Yeah. No.
So people who feel like it's anti-white or it's anti-white propaganda, I wouldn't say so much it's anti-white propaganda as it is just exposing the truth in history.
Yeah.
And just telling it how it was. And the feelings and the emotions that come out of that can be a different conversation, for sure. But those feelings and emotions aren't talked about unless the truth of what happened is really shown and discussed. So, man, yeah, even putting that into the episode together was tough. For me, knowing what happened in 2020 and seeing what had happened to my family, my friends, for different reasons throughout the course of my life, makes me, pun intended, extremely proud to be a part of something like that.
Yeah.
Because of how important it was to just discuss it. Not just discuss it, have meetings about it, put it together, show it. Not just show it, but okay, we're seeing it. Are we feeling what we often hide in this episode? And is it coming across the way it needs to so that feeling is preserved? Not because it needs to be glorified, but because we need to honor the people that experienced it.
Yeah, it's real.
So it was real, man. It was real. It was hard to do, but very rewarding to do because of how important it was. So the people that feel a certain type of way about it, I encourage them to ask why they feel a certain kind of way about it and to understand the context of why it felt important to tell that story. And again, hats off to Disney for just letting something that truthful exist in that format. I'm kind of in the back of my head kind of smiling and knowing, all right, well, Juneteenth is on Disney Plus. Kids can hit play on that and just get some context on its own. Yeah. And if you feel like that's too much for your children, sure, fine. It's still going to be there. And personally, I feel like it's for the right audience at the right time, because I was talking to my mom about this earlier. In a sense, that was the talk I got when I was a kid. The end of that episode, contextualizing it. And to contextualize it and to put it in a form where kids can possibly easily digest it more so than they ever could the past 25, 30 plus years. Any criticisms fall way and far between. Yeah. They don't really equate to the emotional capacity of what so many people worked on when it came to that episode.
Man. There's nothing more to add to that. Just job well done. That's powerful and well put and well stated. Calvin, I know a lot of people are gonna be touched by what you shared by the Proud Family. If you haven't watched it, please go and get on the Disney. go get Disney. Go get it. Sign up for it. Do what you need to do. Yep. And please enjoy and stream it and watch it. It's powerful. Calvin, thank you so much for joining us.
David,
it's been awesome, man.
No, this has been awesome. Yeah.
No, we can follow you on social media, all of that. We can stay in touch with you there.
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram at calvins.cuts. Yeah. That's CALVINS.CUTS. And my website's calvinonealjr.com.
For sure. Well, you guys heard it. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Posting Black. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all of our platforms where you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. Stay black.
Stay black.